seconds I turned the dial, I turned your expression. I said, now, haven't you learned your last lesson? I try to understand, I just don't get it.
What's going on, everybody? You're listening to 93.3 CFMU. Thanks for tuning back, as always, to the ALMAMAC here, Thursdays, noon to 12:30. Coming at you live, if you're listening live, currently 12:06, March 1st. Yes, we are into the third month of the year, folks. Otherwise, you can be listening to this anytime, as this is podcasted anywhere around the world on cfmu.ca, or if you're old-fashioned, you can turn up the dial on 93.3. Well, I hope all of you are having a grand and terrific day. And before we get started, I would, of course, like to acknowledge that CFMU is situated upon the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, and this territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is directly adjacent to the Haldimand Treaty Territory. Episode 55, folks. 55. That's right. We're here. We are well on our way, I guess, to the triple digits. I guess more than halfway now. We're not quite there yet, but we will get there together. Do not worry. Now, before I introduce my guest for today, we're going to do Tidbit Thursday. Whether you love it or you hate it, I am going to do it, so I apologize. I actually started following this handle on Twitter. I think it's called Facts and Fiction, or Fun Facts. I don't remember. But it turns out they give you like a couple of fun facts throughout the day. So that is a little bit easier than me frantically Googling the I'm feeling curious button before I come here. But today's Tidbit Thursday is courtesy of that Twitter handle. I'll be sure to put that out in the description. But it turns out that when you hit your funny bone, you're not really hitting a bone there. It's really the ulnar nerve that is causing that weird tingly sensation. So yeah, next time somebody says you're tickling my funny bone, they should really say you're tickling my funny nerve. Were you aware of that, Melody, that it's a nerve rather than a bone?
I did, but then I forgot, and now you reminded me of it.
There you go. That is the benefit of Tidbit Thursday. There we go. So as you can obviously tell, I have a terrific guest with me today in the studio today. Her name is Melody Song, and she is a PhD candidate in health policy. She is specifically in the Department of Health Research Methods, Evidence, and Impact under the Faculty of Health Sciences. How are you doing today on this chilly Thursday, Melody?
Oh, I am doing great. I had a donut on the way, so I'm all good.
I mean, is there any other better way to start your day? I guess.
Know. That was the best.
Yeah, compared to the great weather we had a couple of days ago, but we're going back into that small polar freeze. Yeah. So, Melody, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your research?
So, if I want to talk about my research, I'll have to start with my motivation.
Okay.
So, the motivation of doing this research was growing up, I've always thought that, there's this truth to something that we do. For example, vaccination. I thought that vaccines are something pretty straightforward. If you get a shot, then you might be protected from a disease. And 4 years ago, I came here to Canada from Taiwan to study a PhD program. And what I found is that around me, including my friends, a lot of people blatantly tell me that they don't believe in vaccines. And I was very curious about that. So that started the research. And I asked myself, if we, as evidence-informed as we are, or as much as we want to be, cannot convince the public that vaccines are good, then we must be doing something wrong, and I want to know why. Yeah.
Nice. I like that. You're trying to figure out the why behind that. And Melody, I don't think there is no better time to have you on the show, because as I'm sure you're well aware of, that infamous and, may I say, insidious, I think it was a 1998 Wakefield paper.
Yeah.
It turns 2 decades old a couple days ago, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you want to talk about that a little bit, maybe.
Sure. It is that the paper that started it all, and it wouldn't be so influential if it wasn't published in The Lancet. I think all health sciences students know how important The Lancet is. In fact, it was retracted in 2010. So the paper was written by a British physician. Now his license is retracted, and he claimed that vaccination, specifically one type of vaccine, causes or is linked, at least correlated to autism. And this was in 1998, but the paper didn't get retracted immediately. It was retracted 12 years later. And so during these 12 years, I think, especially from the media from Britain and the media in English-speaking countries, really use that as an ammunition to say that, well, you see, the Lancet did not retract that paper, so there must be some token of truth in there. And I think that did a lot of damage to begin with. Yeah, but now we're seeing that to spread around the world. We see at least 12 countries linking this hesitancy towards vaccines to individual localized outbreaks because parents are kind of hesitant about what they find on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not always, though, I mean, you can definitely clarify, but I feel it's not always, though, what misinformation perhaps, or what they see on the internet. Sometimes it's just, I guess, beliefs, whether it's cultural thoughts or religious thoughts that are just ingrained in them.
Yeah.
That may prevent them from allowing their kids to get vaccinated.
Absolutely. I think part of the reason why in academia we are so removed from these kind of, let's not say remove, let's use the term, we can isolate ourselves from beliefs and concepts that doesn't have evidence as a foundation because we're trained to do so, right? But even amongst my friends, we can talk about these really factual ideas, but like such as vaccination, we say, I will say, well, yes, vaccines are not 100% safe. And they will say, so you don't really know what you're saying. I think academics are trained to say, we're not 100% sure, but this is the probability, this is the odds ratio. And saying something with such a reserved scientific way makes the public actually more afraid of what we say, and they're more uncertain because they're not trained to think like a scientist, or even if they are, and these people are really smart people that say, I don't believe in vaccines, right? We're starting to see that. It's almost as if their critical thinking has contributed to this kind of hesitancy. And so that's part of the reason why I'm doing this type of research. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are, yeah.
Yeah, so Melody, let's delve specifically, I guess, into your research. I mean, you kind of already alluded to it, that you're slowly finding that it's well-educated people that may kind of be hesitant about vaccination. So, and you're, again, trying to figure out why this anti-vaccine movement may be so at large. So how do you go about doing this? Do you just interview the general public? I guess, who are your participants? Right.
So my participants are, first and foremost, people that are online. I have basically two groups. The ones online I am very interested in because they're ones that are, I don't know who they are. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they look like. And this is going against the grain of public health promotion, where we used to have interventions where the source is clear, the problem can be traced to one single incident or event, and the intervention can be controlled, the situation is localized, and we have the authority to intervene, where social media is the complete opposite. Anyone can comment, you can be someone who's in a rural area, if you have internet access, there's no threshold to making claims online. So that's my first group of participants that I have looked at. So using Twitter, I searched for terms related to vaccination and looked at what are they talking about, who is talking to whom, and the frequency that they're talking to each other. Is the public health units in Ontario talking to each other, talking to people who are anti-vaccine? So the second part of my research is looking at policymakers in Ontario, specifically people who decide the immunization policies and people who decide communication content. And we want to figure out how are they going to tackle social media and what kind of technology are they going to use to promote vaccines, or at least create a public confidence in vaccines in Ontario.
Melody, have you felt that, I guess, with the, dramatically increasing use of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, has it been, I mean, it must have been easier to spread misinformation, but is it not also easier to somehow counter that misinformation because you have so many other, as you mentioned, public health authorities that may be communicating or countering this information? What have you found?
And at first I thought that was the case, but more and more research and a lot of people have been trying to use social media as an intervention. Meta-analyses and systematic reviews have shown that it really doesn't work. It even has a backfire effect. I think it was Brendan Nyan who published a paper with his colleagues that said if you counter people's beliefs with facts, all you're going to get is angrier anti-vaccinationists. And so that really stuck with me. And there's more research in a similar vein that kind of proves that, using Twitter or social media as a way of putting out information, factual information, really doesn't work. What we need to do is use emotion. So emotion as an appeal. We are thinking in a very evidence-informed way, but if you ask a very worried parent or a first-time mother what they want to know, they really want to know if their friends have vaccinated their kids, if the doctor has vaccinated their kids. They will ask this ultimate question, well, if I were you, will you vaccinate my kid in my situation? So it's putting that human touch, that matter of concern into the equation that might potentially work. And I think that's where the community is heading towards.
Oh, that's interesting, because I imagine perhaps the best way or the best time to tackle this sort of issue is during the clinical encounter, where you have somebody with knowledge to say, hey, it's actually important to vaccinate your kids. But you're saying that research has actually shown the opposite. It has almost a backfiring effect. Especially
on social media and in a clinical setting. I think most people have come into the clinic. My background is a registered nurse, and so at my time, I didn't experience people who opposed vaccines, so that wasn't an issue. But I did an interview with someone in Ontario who's a very influential physician who treats patients, and they said, well, they walk in the door and they already know what they want, and I'm not going to spend my time, and I don't have time to convince them, and I can't reject them, so I'm just going to not do anything. So we kind of see this lethargy in the clinical setting and in public health, where we think that this is probably a nuance, a nuisance, probably not worth intervening. But I think it's increasingly more important, like you said, to intervene, because we're actually in these echo chambers where we only talk to each other who already kind of have similar ways of thought. So you and I were on the same page, but you and the other person on the street who have nothing in common, that have no basis for conversation, will likely not have the same kind of conversation as we are having on social media.
I like what you mentioned there, echo chambers. Yeah, we're only, I guess, talking to ourselves rather than talking between ourselves.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
One question here, Melody, before we go on break. I was also reading a little bit into the anti-vaccine movement, and it seems that people are almost divided. Some people think that nothing is going to change despite all the information that gets out there. It's just human nature that people are going to almost look for information that confirms their own bias and follows that. While other people are saying, no, with increasing technology, as you mentioned, with increasing relationships, perhaps we can combat this, anti-vaccine movement or other types of misinformation that's spread. So I guess, where do you stand? And I guess, where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's a really great question. at first I was a little pessimistic about where we're going because social media is isolating ourselves. We're creating filter bubbles for ourselves. When we type in one keyword, it's different. We have different results on our Google search engines from one person to another based on our preferences. And what I think going forward we can expect is that people, institutions, and organizations who are really good at leveraging different types of communications methods, for example, social media, internet, print, are going to take advantage of this system called the hybrid media system to control politics and power. And this is a book by Andrew Chadwick that I super recommend everyone to read. It's such a delightful read. It talks about how politics has been kind of swayed by people who can really understand how communications and media works. And if we can use that to our advantage in health, we might be going to somewhere that can help us communicate with the public a lot better than we are, because we're kind of hiding behind a curtain. We're kind of like too humble to say what we know.
Good point. We're going to take a short break here on 93.3 CFMU, but stay tuned because when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Melody and perhaps what she did before she embarked on her PhD.